I'd like to talk for a little bit about some of the issues of goal setting and why sometimes they don't work. We often wonder, you know, I have a goal. I'm being a hypothetical person now. I have a goal, and I set this goal 2 years ago, and on my goal card I wrote that it was going to have been achieved 1 year ago, and nothing's happened. Therefore, this whole idea is BS. That's the feeling that a lot of people have. And the reality is the laws of science do not change. But there are fine points in the laws that people sometimes overlook. One of those in goal setting has to do with the fact that your energy has to be focused. And it has to be focused in a certain way. When you're setting a goal, you're focusing your energy on, most likely, you're focusing your energy on the goal achieved, on the goal itself. You say, I want a new Lamborghini. And as a matter of fact, it's going to be a Lamborghini Urus, and it's going to be bright yellow like the one in the magazine. And I'm going to be, I'm going to love it. But I'm focusing on the object. Neville made it really clear when he said, focus your attention on the feeling of the goal achieved. That's probably the number one, I don't want to call it an error in thinking, but it's a missed point, is that your energy needs to be focused on the feeling of the goal achieved. I had a woman ask me one time, I have a goal and I'm not sure I'm on the right frequency for the goal because it's not happening. And I asked her, how do you feel in your imagination? How do you feel when the goal is achieved? She said, well, I feel great. I'm joyful. I feel grateful. She had a whole bunch of words. I said, well, pick one of those words. That's the frequency. It's not the object. It's the feeling of having achieved the object. And it has to do with your focused attention, because focusing your attention tells infinite intelligence, tells source energy where to flow. If you've been focusing your attention on the feeling of the goal achieved, well, I do that, then the next thing I would say is there's something in physics called vector addition, and it has to do with analyzing forces on an object and how it makes it move. And in vector addition, very simply, it is a little bit like if you have like the game tug of war, where you pull on, we have two teams and they're pulling on both ends of a rope. But if you had an unbalanced force on one side was stronger than the other, which is what happens in tug of war, it's predictable where that rope's going to go. It's going to go in the direction of the stronger force. The same thing happens if you can imagine a cart being pulled by two horses. There's a reason horses are harnessed the way they are. So they both pull in exactly the same direction. Because if one horse pulls in this direction and the other horse pulls in a slightly different direction, vector addition says the resultant direction is going to be halfway between the two. And you're not going to be going in the direction that you planned. What are the forces within your own mind, within your own heart? What forces are at work that are working in a different direction than the force of your focused feeling of the goal achieved? Is there doubt in there? is there may be a lack of what I call faith. Faith is a word that's often used. It's used in many different ways. But the way I define faith, and it seems to work well in the situations that I read about, is being convinced that the goal that you have in your mind is that source energy, infinite intelligence, God is able to give you that. Of course, source energy is infinite. It contains all energy. Of course, your goal, the goal that you've imagined, the goal that you would really love, source energy is capable of creating that. Source energy has created everything because everything is a form of combinations of energy. Faith is the being convinced that God is able to give you what you've asked for. Belief, which is the other word, is being convinced that it's already been given to you. Because in the universe, all energy has always existed. There is no past, present, and future. All energy, past, present, and future, exists now. Not just exists now, it exists now everywhere. So when you focus your attention on the feeling of the goal achieved, that tells source energy where to start moving. The fact that you have imagined it, that you have sent that thought out of the object itself, or the person that you want to be, or the thing that you would love to do, that thought has always existed. And a thought has come, when you say a thought came to me, literally the thought came to you. And the idea of the high-tech things that we see now that were not in existence 50 years ago, like the cell phone, everything has always been here for the cell phone, except the will to put it together and the understanding of how the materials needed to be manipulated to do it. But everything's always been here except the thought. So when you're thinking of your goal achieved, that's the focus of your attention. If it's not happening, and it can happen quickly. If it hasn't happened, there are two things that are possibly at work. One is there's some sort of vector issue. There are forces within you that are keeping your thoughts from being focused in the direction that you want them to be, whether it's doubt, fear, your self-image, whatever it happens to be. I don't deserve this. It doesn't take much to put it off just a little bit, and if it's off just a little bit over time, you're a long ways away from where you thought you were going to be. The other factor that comes into play is time. And time is something, it's one of these fundamentally undefinable, basic things that we measure, qualities that we measure in the physical world. But time we often think of as, here's the beginning of my life, here's the end of my life, and this wiggly path is the path that I take between A and B. That time has a space property to it, and it takes a certain amount of time to travel from here to here. But time is not a two-dimensional or a one-dimensional object. Time is three-dimensional, and it's much more like a soft, pliable sponge than anything else. And it can change. The distance between two objects can change with compression. It can change with turning, and these are properties that I can only allude to using a sponge as an example. But all time exists in the present. Past, present, and future are all here at the same time. That's why when you think of, and you've been a time traveler. Everybody here is a time traveler already, because you have gone in your mind into the past and relived events. If anybody that hasn't, nobody has, because we've all spent time living in the past, which is, to me, is good evidence that time really is all in one place. And we can travel in our imagination to a place in the past and relive an event. And to your subconscious mind, that event is real. It's happening right now, because your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between something really happening and something happening only in your mind. In the same way, you can project your thoughts into the future to the feeling of the goal achieved. And you can bring that, Neville says, the future must become the present. You bring that future feeling, the feeling of yourself, the person you are, the feelings you have after your goal is achieved, you bring that back to the present, and you live that in your present life. The time factor brings into this into mind the whole idea of gestation. If you plant a seed of corn in your garden in May, you don't expect to go out the next day and have corn, a mature corn plant, because it takes time for the germination to take place. It takes time for the corn seed, the young corn plant, to pull up nutrients, to change water and carbon dioxide and minerals in the earth into cellulose and all the fibers that are needed to make the corn plant, and to eventually produce the seeds. That takes time, and everything has its own gestation period. Some things can happen more rapidly than others. I had a goal that I set when I was probably 18 years old. I wanted to live in a house in the forest by the ocean. There aren't that many houses like that around. But about a little over 25 years ago, I was driving by a piece of property that I thought was state forest property, and there was a for sale sign on it. And I was out looking. I've been a surfer all my life. I was out looking for waves to go surfing. I stopped my truck. I got out of the truck. I pulled up the sign and hid it in the bushes, and wrote down the number of the real estate agent, called the agent, and about 3 months later was signing papers on a lot of property in the forest, 200 feet from the beach. And a year or two after that, had a house there, and I've been here ever since. That was done not really following all of the rules about goal setting that we learn. I didn't have it written down. It was absolutely just in my heart and mind. But the other thing that has to happen with this whole gestation period, and it was 30 years from the time I first thought of it to the time it actually happened. But had I not been paying attention, I would have passed right by that sign, and somebody else would be living on this property. So the other thing is, set your goals. Remember that it's going to take time. Check that you don't have stops and barriers that are within yourself about not achieving the goal, because there's nothing that says your goal will not be achieved as long as you follow the principles. And then remember to pay attention. Pay attention to signs, pay attention to coincidences, pay attention to synchronicities, pay attention to things as they come up, which is the universe, source energy, showing you the next step. Pay attention to those things. And another word that comes up is the word trust. In the last couple of years, I've started kiteboarding. And if you've ever seen kiteboarding, it's a large kite measured in square meters. I think my largest one is 13 square meters, which is a pretty big kite. Big enough that if the wind is blowing hard, it'll launch you right off the ground. And usually the people that are doing that are doing it intentionally. Sometimes it happens unintentionally, and all of a sudden you're 10 feet above the water and you didn't really plan on being there. But when I was learning to kiteboard, a voice came to me as I was learning how to do what they call water starts. You're hooked to the kite, which is strings about 20 or 23 meters long. 4 of them that are controlling the kite, and control of the kite is the whole lesson. I mean, what you have to learn is how to control the kite, because that's what keeps you safe. You're connected to the kite with a heavy metal harness. And when you're lifted out of the water, you want to pull on what they call the bar, which controls the kite. You want to pull on the bar with your hands, but that's the worst thing to do, because when you pull on the bar, it gives the kite more power and it lifts you even harder. What you do is you let the kite lift you from the harness, and you're just controlling the direction of the kite. A voice came to me when I was having problems with controlling my kite that said, trust the harness and trust the wind. Because all of the power that I needed was already there. I just wasn't utilizing what was already available to me, the harness and the control that I had. I wasn't utilizing it to get the results that I wanted. The harness, to me, it looks like a restriction, but that's the process. That's the method. That's the steps. Trust the process. Give yourself up to it, because what you're giving up in trusting, trust has a degree of vulnerability and surrender associated with it. If you trust somebody, you're willing to give up some of your own ego, some of your own ideas, some of your own feeling about how things should be done in deference to the other person. Trust the harness, trust the process, and trust the wind and your ability to do the things you need to control it. Because those are the 2 factors that will make things go the direction that you want. It'll take you closer to your goal, bring your goal closer to you. And the process is part of the laws of the universe. You're not creating something new. You're just following laws that have always been there and always will be. Thanks for being with us today. My goal is to give you value with every lesson. If you would like us to notify you every time a new lesson is ready, click subscribe below, then turn on notifications. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.